we got a QR code up here that if you want to scan this real quick, just for our sermon notes this morning, just so you can be following along. Lots of really key things that we're going to be picking up on this morning. Let me just tell you something. I asked the Lord just this past week, I was like, God, in the midst of this message, is there something that you really are trying to say here? Like, is there something that, like, in just a summarized word that, God, you just give me? And it was interesting because in just that moment, I feel like the Spirit just kind of led on me that He wants us to understand this, that He loves us so much, and He wants us to slow down and see that. He loves us so much, and He wants us to slow down so that we can understand that. Listen, we're doing probably about a 3-week series on this idea of rest. This idea of rest. Now, where in the world would that idea have come from? You know, the funny thing is like, when you talk to people in passing, and you walk up to someone and you're like, hey, how are you doing? 9 times out of 10, you're gonna get, I'm good, or I'm tired. Facts? I'm good. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I got so much happening. I got so much going on. I got so much that's in my life happening right now that I don't even have time to go to the bathroom half the time. And so God, like I'm exhausted. I'm tired. And I need it all just to kind of stop, right? I mean, I'm excited about this series because I believe that that's where we are. I believe that as a society, we are a tired, exhausted, just burnt at both ends of the candles society. I think that's outside, but I also think that's inside. I think that's in the church as well. I think that's us. I think we struggle with this aspect of it. And it is no coincidence that we are talking about rest coming into probably the busiest season of our lives, like Thanksgiving, and then right after that goes right into the Christmas holidays. And how many of you are already ready for January because you're already exhausted by what December is going to look like? Anybody? Yes, exactly. That's what I thought. It's exhausting, right? So I'm excited because I believe that God has something to say to us. I'm nervous because I've got to preach this, and I'm terrible at this. I am terrible at the idea of rest. I don't do this stuff well. So I know I'm going to get my teeth kicked in on a regular basis as I'm preparing for this, going, God, this is for them, not me. So I believe He has something to say. I think if we're going to be the people, listen to me, I think if we're going to be the people that God wants us to be, I think if we're going to be a people that are going to watch God move and do mighty, mighty, mighty things, I think we're going to have to figure this whole rest thing out. And I think we're going to have to learn how to stop. We got to learn to stop. Psalm 46:10 in the New American Standard says this: stop striving and know that I am God. I think those first 2 words are critical to this understanding that we're in today, where He says, just stop moving. Stop striving. Stop moving forward. Stop always thinking about what's next. I need you to stop. But what does He want you to do? He wants you to know that He's God. So there's something about this stopping and knowing. Resting and exalting and acknowledging who He is. You remember the first time you got a smartphone? I know some of you are like, can we just go back to the brick Nokia phones? Like, those were so great. But you remember the first time that you bit the bullet and you bought your iPhone? Or you bought your Android that's less than, or whatever. But you had it and you got it and you were just like, man, the first time you opened it, you were just like amazed at how fast it was and all the things that it could do. And you're just like, this is great. And then like day 2, you're like, come on. And a month later, you're like, what is wrong with my phone? It is not working anymore. It is not efficient anymore. I just need to put a date in here on the calendar, and I can't even seem to pull that up. And what do? You take it to the Genius Bar, you take it to whoever, and you hand it to them and you say, my phone is broken. And what's the first thing they tell you to do? Or what's the first thing they ask? When was the last time you shut it off? When was the last time? I'm like going, never? You're supposed to do that? If I shut it off, then I'm going to miss a text message, right? They say shut it off because it reboots the system so that it functions again like it's supposed to. Glitch-free, sort of. My question for you is, when was the last time that you slowed down and stopped and rebooted your soul? You rebooted this. Because I have a feeling there's probably some of us that are so broken right now, and you're so, like, you don't function anymore because you're exhausted and you haven't stopped to reboot. Listen, this idea, and I'm going to call it this rhythm of rest was woven into creation by God. This idea of rest, this rhythm of rest was actually woven into creation. For the purpose of what we're talking about, to stop what we're doing so that we can remember who God is. We can remember how awesome He is. Stopping and remembering. Remember in Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2, right? Like God is creating. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? He spoke and existence happened. He breathed and light came out. And then creation, the world, the planets, everything about it, the universe. He created plants and animals and waters and seas and all of it. And for 6 days he worked. And on the seventh day, what did you say he did? Rested. He rested on the seventh day. Are you beginning to see kind of the beginnings of this rhythm that God's putting in? But here's what I need you to understand. I don't think that God sat up there and looked at Jesus and said, bro, I'm tired. That was 6 days of hard work. I'm exhausted, bro. I don't know that the Father ever said bro. But I'm exhausted. This God who Scripture says He never sleeps, He doesn't slumber, He doesn't grow weary, He doesn't get tired. I can't imagine at this point Tom said, hey, I'm tired, I need to shut off. So if He didn't shut off, if He didn't push like power on Himself, what did He do? What was happening? And here's the deal, man, and I believe that there's a lot of theologians that believe this as well, but I have a feeling that He did something. He didn't check out. In fact, what I think He did is I think He looked back on the 6 days and went, this is good. That's real good. I did this. Perfect. Creation set in place. This is very good. So in His resting, He Himself remembered His goodness. He remembered what this was about. The seventh day was pointing back to God Himself as His sovereign God who makes and holds all things together. Listen, at this point, I think that we can say that God established a rhythm of rest by where 6 days you work, and the seventh day you rested to remind you of just how amazing God is. And you ready for this? How insufficient you are. And that's key. I think that's why we get tired, so tired sometimes that we fall asleep doing what we're doing. Because I think God wants us to constantly be reminded that we can't do this. We are going to burn out, but He is the one who can hold all of this together. And so in our resting, in our rhythms of rest, it is so that we can understand who He is. 2 Corinthians 3:5, He tells us that. Not that we're competent to claim anything in ourselves. We don't have all of this figured out. We can't do everything that we think that we can do sometimes, most of the time. Maybe for some of you, all of the time. So much that He wants us of His people that you see this submitted into the 10 Commandments. Like he established this in this early law, this covenant that he made with his people. This is how you're going to live. You're going to worship me, and part of worshiping me is going to be stopping and remembering me. He tells us that in verse 8, Exodus 28. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but in the seventh day is the Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your sons or your daughters, your male servants, your female servants, your livestock, sojourners who were within the gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all of them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. This rhythm of rest that he's called us to, by the way, is good. Some of us, we get burnt out at rest. Like, I used to laugh at people that took naps. I'm like, you don't have time for that. There's people going to hell. We don't have time to sleep. I'd go take a nap and I was more wasted afterwards. So I was like, there's no time for this. I'm way better at it now. I know when done is done, and 2 o'clock comes around and I'm like, I can't do anything else. Yeah. So the Sabbath was embedded into this life of Israel as this covenant between God and his people, that we would cease from working. And that was a huge, important piece of it. But the Sabbath, listen to this. This is such a cool picture of what the Sabbath really was supposed to be about, right? It served as this covenant sign between Israel and God, unfolding this weekly drama. His people on this weekly basis would work, and they would come to a place where they would stop and remember. Or that's what they were supposed to do. That was the hope that they would have. That they would have this weekly drama where they would stop to remember and they would testify to God as mighty creator. That they would be like, let's stop and remember who he is, what he's done. That he's our redeemer, he rescued us. Remember that time that we were in Egypt, and he brought us out of that? Do we remember that? Like, have we stopped and remembered what he's done for us? Because that's part of this rhythm of resting. Not putting us at the centerpiece of our rest, but it's putting him at the centerpiece of our rest. And our rhythm of remembering and recognizing we can't, he does. Think about what he did when he brought his people, Israel, he brought them out into the wilderness. Remember that? And they were so concerned, like, what are we going to do for food? And God was like, hey, I got you. I got you. I need you not to worry about this. I got you. Because what's going to happen is you're going to wake up tomorrow and there's going to be manna all over the place. They're like, what's manna? He's like, man, it's this wafer type stuff that's going to taste really good. He said, and I want you to go out and I want you to collect as much of it as you can that you need for today. And then I got you tomorrow. He said, but don't leave any leftovers. He says, if you leave leftovers, there's going to be a problem. And so like all these people, these good people, they get up and they start collecting. Like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. All right, we're good. I got everything. If a little bit's good, a whole lot's way better because I'm ready for tomorrow too. And they didn't listen to Moses. They left some over and they got up the next morning thinking, we ain't got to get out and work today. And they go to their manna and it's full of maggots and it's rotted. And God goes, I told you that I was going to take care of you today. I had you yesterday, I've got you today. Do you trust me? Do you trust me to do that? Do you trust that when you wake up that that's going to be there? That the quail's going to be there? And then they get to Saturday, right? They get to Saturday and he said, hey, by the way, tomorrow's the Sabbath. And here's what's going to happen today. You're actually going to go out and you're going to collect enough for today and tomorrow. And they're like, yeah? Yeah, collect enough for today and tomorrow. I got you. So they go out and they collect enough. They're kind of picking up on this now, right? They go out and collect enough for today and they collect enough for tomorrow and they wake up the next day and it's a Sabbath day and it's a day of rest where they're not going to go out and they're not going to go out and harvest anymore. And they realize it stayed like he did provide for them like he said he was going to do. So now they're at this place of going, whoo, okay, that was good. But what was the purpose of all of that? He wanted to remind them. He wanted this to be a time where they remembered, hey, I got you. They wanted a time to remember, like where they could trust in God, where God would look at them and say, do you trust me? And in this resting in this moment, they're going, God, we're going to trust you with this because you said you're going to take care of us, and you did. And so, God, we're going to continue to do that. So in this moment of Sabbath for them, it was a day of going, man, our God is faithful. Our God is so good. Our God is taking care of us all along the way. Look at what he's done for us and how he's done all of this. Listen, on the Sabbath, Israel declared total dependence on God. They declared total dependence on her covenant, on their covenant Lord, a Lord more than able to uphold his people, even though for 1 day in 7, man, they put it all down. They put their shovels down, they put their picks down, they didn't go do anything, and they just remembered who he was, and they knew that God was going to take care of them. So this whole rest thing, you know why some of us are so beat up and overworked? You know why we're putting in and grinding all the hours? Because we don't trust God. We don't trust God to do what God said he's going to do. If you seek me, I'm going to take care of you. You see, so this whole rest thing, this whole Sabbath thing is actually about faith. It's about whether or not we're going to trust God to do what he says he's going to do and be the God that he says he's going to be. And so it's like, hey, can you just stop for a minute and believe that I'll take care of you? Because that's what all of this is about. Now, here's the problem. So many of us right now, like when we hear this whole rest thing, what's going through your mind is this. You're going, yep, you are so right, Pastor D. This is right where I'm at, and I need to get out of town. I need to check out. I am exhausted. I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm just gonna check out. Is it possible to read what we've read about what God wanted for his people on this prescribed day that was for them, this gift for them, and just think that God in a time of rest wants us just to check out of life? You think that's what he wants? Knowing what he said in all of Scripture about this life that we're called to. Listen, I don't think we can. I don't think we can look at the rest that God is talking about and saying, man, this is just going to be an eternal trip to the mountains. Let's go. I don't have to worry about work anymore. I don't have to worry about life anymore. I don't have to worry about my kids anymore. I don't have to worry about my marriage anymore. I don't have to worry about trying to figure out a job. I don't have to worry about paying bills. I'm checking out. Let's go. But I don't think that that's what we're talking about, because finding rest for our souls is not about checking out. It's actually about checking in with God. It's not about checking out. It's about checking in. It's not about ceasing from everything and just being like, I'm done, right? Like it's about going, God, I need you more than anything. Listen, this rhythm of Sabbath rest for us is less about not doing. What is it that I cannot do? And it's more about enjoying the goodness of God. It's more about saying, God, you're better. God, you're good. God, you're amazing. And I'm not just checking out of life, but God, I'm just going to remember how awesome you are. Rest is a gift from God that we practice with faith that leads to surrender. Do you hear that? This idea of rest it's a gift from God. He gave it to us, by the way. And we practice it with faith, going, God, I trust you, and it leads to surrender to God. Now, we've been talking lots of Old Testament stuff. I want you to fast forward now 1,300 years to when the Sabbath was not just this commanded in Exodus 20, but now we're walking in the ministry of Jesus. We're watching Jesus talk about this. We're watching Jesus, man, flesh this out. What's interesting about Jesus and the Sabbath is that so much of the trouble that he got in with the Pharisees happened on the Sabbath. So much of the Pharisees looking at him and going, bro, you can't do that. Are you going to do that? I'm watching you, right? They walk up and they go, so are you going to heal somebody today? Blind dude, right? Sabbath day. So is it lawful for you to heal him? I guess, because he does. He does exactly that. See, the problem is what's happening is the Pharisees are coming in and they're seeing the Sabbath is something that is way different than what God has prescribed. We as human beings, ready for this? Listen, we as human beings are good at this. We are good at taking what God has given us to free us and we make it bondage. We take what God has given us to free us and give us rest, and we make it about this bondage that we put on ourselves that's a weight now that we can't even get out from under so that we can be free in him. And that's what they were doing with this law about the Sabbath. This is how this is supposed to look. This is how we want to make it work. This is how this is going to work. If you don't do this just right, God is not going to be happy with you. So make sure you're doing it right. Jesus, that's you too. Jesus is out healing people on the Sabbath. In fact, he looked at one time to him and he said, hey, by the way, guys, you're making this so wrong. Like, you're making this about something that you do in order to impress me, but I need you to know that man was actually, like this was created for man. This was a gift to them so that they could recognize, man, just how good I am. This is not about a law that you put on you to get closer to me. Just because you think you Sabbath well does not mean that you're close to me. So they made it about this law. Dude, in Matthew 12, Jesus and his disciples were walking through some grain fields on the Sabbath, and his disciples were picking grains, like the head of the grain, and they were eating it. And the Pharisees see this, and they walk up to Jesus and say, why are they doing this on the Sabbath? What was not lawful? Why are they doing, like eating? They're picking this grain. This is not lawful for them to do this. I love Jesus, always got words to say. He said to them, have you not read what David did when he was hungry? And those who were with him, how he entered the house of God and ate the bread of the presence, that was before God, right? Which it was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priests. Or have you not read in the law how on the Sabbath the priests in the temple profaned the Sabbath and are guiltless? I tell you, listen, because this is the key. I tell you, something greater than the temple is here. And if you had known what this means, that I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would have not condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man, you ready for this, is Lord of the Sabbath. They weren't even making it about the Lord of the Sabbath. They were making it about themselves. He says, you're making the Sabbath about impressing me, and I need you to know that I made the Sabbath so that you could be impressed by me. It's not about you impressing me. You can't. This is about you seeing how good I am. He's saying, you got it all wrong. You got it all wrong. You're trying to please God by attempting to carry out something that you're never going to be able to do. Hey, how often do you do that? How often do you put the weight around your neck of trying to impress God in a way that God's going, I never asked you to impress me like that because you can't even carry that out perfectly enough to impress me. That doesn't actually make you holy. It doesn't do anything for you to do that. He wants them to understand that it's not about that. It seems that what Jesus is doing is this master of the law, is he's actually rebooting their understanding so that they can understand it differently. He said, listen, you're missing the point. I need you to know that I'm actually the Lord of this. I'm the centerpiece of this. I'm the centerpiece of this. In Christ, something greater than the Sabbath is here. Remember when I said that the Sabbath was pointing to something greater? This is Jesus coming in. That greater has come. And greater than what you are processing. I need you to look at me when I say this, because this is where we're going to dig it home. Ready? Christ is better than the vacation that you think you need. Christ is better than the financial stability that you're actually fighting so hard for. Christ is better than your day off. You don't need a day to check out. You need Jesus. You need Jesus. That's what you need more than anything. I'm not saying that vacations are not great. We're planning one right now with family, and it's already a hassle. truth. But you need Jesus for that deep satisfaction of rest that you're actually looking for. You see, Christ's first coming did not abolish rest. It actually ushered in a deeper kind of rest than the Sabbath could ever do. So in Colossians, man, Paul, because people are getting slammed for this, right? Like these legalistic people are coming in and they're going, hey, you need to be doing this. What about this festival? And what about this? What about the Sabbath? What are you doing with this? What are you doing with this? And I love what Paul came in and said, because he understood Jesus and what Jesus was doing. He said in Colossians 2:16, he says, therefore, let no one pass judgment on you in question of food and drink, or with regard to festivals, or a new moon, or a Sabbath. All of these things that people were doing are not doing and being judged by them. You didn't Sabbath well. You better go figure it out. You're eating this. You better go figure it out. God's not happy with you. But I love what he says. He says, therefore, let no one pass judgment on you. He says, these are a shadow of the things to come, but the substance belongs to who? Christ. The substance of all of this stuff that you're trying to do actually points to me. It points you to what I do. The festivals, they point to me. What you eat and you drink, do all for the glory of God, right? That points to me. Sabbath, you resting, that points to me. Quit pointing to you. They're a shadow. Now here's what's fun. In Matthew 12, man, he's slamming the Pharisees for thinking what they think about the Sabbath rest. But what's interesting, if you back up to Matthew 11, he actually kind of begins forewarning these people about what they're about to get. In Matthew 11, he says this to them. Remember what the Pharisees just talked about in 12. Hey, you're not getting the Sabbath. Man, this rest thing is different the way you're supposed to be thinking about it. But Jesus looked at him and says, hey, come to me. This is verse 28. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you what? Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find what? Rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So people, we got to talk about where real rest comes from. We got to talk about where real rest comes from. You ready? Number one, rest. This isn't rocket science. Y'all could have written this. Rest is found in our coming to Jesus. And can we note here that this coming that he's talking about, like this coming to Jesus, is not just one and done? Man, how good are we as Christians today that think that our coming to Christ was this one-time encounter where we said this prayer, we got baptized, and now what do? We fight like crazy to figure out how to live this life for Jesus the way he's called us to. God, thank you that I got to come to you. Now I got to figure out how to go and do. And so we're exhausted. Man, so many of us, and I have been there so I can say this with confidence, right? So many of us, you're exhausted because you still think it's about you making Jesus happy. You're still trying to figure that out. Jesus, I know that I belong to you, but I'm not sure that I do today because I'm still not figured this out and I'm still struggling with this. I've got sin that I'm walking in. I got to figure this out. I dare say that's why so many of us are exhausted. I'm a Christian, right? So that's the thing we say. I'm a Christian. So now let me figure out how to make my marriage work. Have you ever said that one? I know I'm a Christian, so now let me try to figure this out. In essence, what we're saying is, I know that I belong to Jesus. I know that he has saved me. I know that he has empowered me, but I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to figure out how to do it. Thanks for saving me. I'll see you in heaven one day. But right now, I'm just going to figure out how to make my marriage work. I'm a Christian, so now let me figure out how to parent, right? How many of you, you're done. You're like, I'm exhausted when it comes to parenting. It's okay to say that, by the way. This is church. God knows. We just don't like other people to know. Yes. Can I ask you a question? When was the last time you took your kid's problem to the Lord? When was the last time that you're like, man, I can't figure this out. God, but you made them. You know exactly what they're doing and why. Ask and you'll receive. Or let me figure it out. I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, I'm walking with you, Jesus, but let me figure out how to handle my situations in the workplace. Let me figure out how to handle this conversation with my boss. Man, hey, I appreciate you saving me, see you in heaven, but I got some work to do down here with my boss, and I need to try to figure this out. Let me figure out how to handle my money the right way. Thanks for giving it all to me. I'm going to go figure out how to use it now. And we wonder why we have money issues. We wonder why we have financial issues. We wonder why we're broke, why we're overspending everything we have and way more than what we have, why we don't give, why we don't surrender, why we don't give sacrificially in our lives, because it's still us trying to figure out how to do this. We forget what God has called us to do. By the way, what he's called us to do actually frees us. Did you know that? When he put something in place that says, this is how I want you to live, it's not because he's going, hey, I'm a bully and I'm going to figure this out for you. No, it's him going, hey, when you do this, man, you're not going to be bound to that anymore. Did you know that giving actually frees us from money? Do you know that generosity actually frees us from the pains of trying to figure that out? Because we're willing to say, this is not even mine anyway. This is yours, God. So he's given us this freedom. Tangent, sorry. Let me figure out, oh, this is a good one. Oh, this was me. Hey, thanks for saving me, God. Now I'm going to figure out my spiritual walk. I'm going to figure out how to walk with you. I'm going to figure out how to do this. Thanks, God. Thanks for saving me. Now I'm going to work real hard to try to get to you now. Man, I jumped on that spin cycle that got nowhere. And I pumped my little body to pieces, and I didn't get anywhere, and I felt like I was further away. And it's because he says, hey, I've got this. I've actually given you everything that you need for life and godliness, so why don't you come to me? Hey, do you know that he has what you need for your marriage? Do you know that he has what you need for your job and figuring that? Do you know he has what you need for parenting? He's got that. You don't have to beat your chest like this and say, God, I'm Superman, and I'm going to figure this out. He's looking at you and going, I didn't ask you to do that. I didn't tell you to do that. You're struggling right now? Come to me. Why? He says, because I'll give you rest. And it's an invitation to all of us. Not just you that have it all figured out. It's for all of us. Number 2, rest is for those who are overworked and overwhelmed. You overworked? You overwhelmed? Then this invitation's for you. That's what he says. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Now, what's interesting and what I love about this is like this idea of labor and heavy laden. It describes all, and I'm going to read this because I want you to hear this. It's an incredible depiction of what those words mean. It describes all who are pressed down and burdened by the feeling of sin. Man, how many of you got sin in your life that's just beating you up? And you run from God. It's exhausting, isn't it? When we're beat up and overworked and overwhelmed and burdened by our sin, that's when he says, you need me. You need me bad. You'll be exhausted if you figure it out by yourself because there's not enough good that you can do. It describes those whose conscience are set at work, who have brought to concern about their soul, all who are anxious about salvation and desire to have it, all who tremble at the thought of judgment and know not how to get through it, and of hell and are afraid of falling into it, and longing for heaven and dreading not getting to it, and are distressed at the thought of their own sinfulness and want deliverance. That's who he's talking to, by the way. Those of us who are going, man, I don't know that I got this figured out. I don't know that I understand how to get to heaven. I don't know how to deal with my sin. I don't know how to walk through this life. He said, bingo, I'm your man. Come to me. You overworked, you overburdened, you're trying to figure out this whole spiritual life on your own. Man, you need my rest. Guess what? I specialize in giving that. I specialize in giving that. He did say that he came to give life and life to the full. Life to the full. In him. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. People who are laden. See if any of these apply to you. You ready? Laden heavily because they are weary, vexed, disappointed, despairing. Laden with sin, guilt, dread, remorse, fear of death. Laden with care, anxiety, greed, ambition. Laden with sorrow, poverty, oppression, slander. Laden with doubt, temptation, conflict, inner faintness. Any of that sound familiar? You deal with any of that? Because, man, I picked up on some of those the other day where I woke up and I was like, going, God, I'm so disappointed in me because I know that I could do better. And then I look at this stuff and he's going, listen, your disappointment is wearing you out. Come to me. Let me have your disappointment. Because I'll give you rest. Here's what Jesus is saying. Quit trying to figure it all out and just come to me. And by the way, for those of you who right now are just going, man, I'm not there yet, Dustin. Like, I still got some stuff I need to work on. I still got some stuff that I need to do. Like your inability to figure all of that, he says, listen, I need you to put that aside because you can't do it. Just come to me. Come to me in your inability. Just come to me. Let me have it. I will give you rest. This idea of rest is this idea of refreshed. You know what I'm talking about? You know those hot days like we had like last week? Where you're just like, this is unseasonable. And like, man, you're just exhausted and you're tired and you're parched and you have nothing. You're just like, oh, I just need something to like quench my life right now, my body. And you go in and you get a bit of glass of Gatorade or water or whatever it is that you drink and all of a sudden you're just like, whew, yeah. All right, let's go. That's the refreshment that he's talking about. To be able to just say, God, thank you. Thank you for giving. I love Psalm 23. Listen, when we're his sheep come to him and we can rest in the reality that the good shepherd knows what we need to find rest. Did you know that? When we come to him, he goes, hey, I know what you need. Psalm 23, what does it say? He makes me lie down in green pastures. He makes me. Why? Why do you make your kids do the stuff that you make them do? Hopefully because it's better for them. He knows what you need. You need a green pasture right now. Come here, let's go, lay down. Gently. I know some of you think he's like, ugh. No, he leads us beside still waters because he knows if you had fast water right now, you'd freak out. So he leads you to what you need because he knows the rest that you need. But here's the problem. If we never come to the sheep, we're going to be exhausted. We're not going to know how to find rest ourselves. You can't do it because your rest is going to be what? Check out. And he says you actually need to check in. Doesn't that change how we vacation now? We go to vacation like guilty as charged, okay? I'll go on vacation and be like, I'm not even going to church. I'm not. I do church all the time. So for me, I'm thinking I'm just going to free myself from that and I don't go to church. How's that anything like what God's calling me to do? I'm going to forget about everybody. I'm going to forget about all my friends. I'm not going to think about anybody. I'm not even going to bring my Bible. I'm vegging out. This is me time. All about me. And God's going, that's not rest. That's vacation. How many of you people come back from vacation and you're more exhausted than when you went? Bingo. Yes. That's why I don't ever want to go to Disney because you guys have ruined it for me. You go to Disney and come back and it's like, it was the worst thing we've ever done. I'm like, thank you. You made my life easy. Made my life easy. Facts, true. 11:29, he says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and lowly of heart, and you will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy, my burden is life. So packed full of truth. Listen, this is where we become challenged with this idea of resting, meaning we need to check out. He's actually saying, man, you need to get closer. He says, yoke up with me. Put my yoke, which is a paradox in and of itself. What's a yoke? We've talked about this before. A yoke is this heavy thing that they put on an animal to control them. You're going, how does that bring rest? It's how he defines his yoke. You see, the beauty of a yoke, even with an animal, is that you typically put it on a stronger animal so that you can control them so that they know where to go. They're not all over the place. So they're literally able to do exactly what they're supposed to do. No wasted energy anywhere else. But it's also used when they're training up a weaker animal. An animal that if you just throw the yoke on them, man, it is just going to weigh them down and they're not going to be able to do it. So what do? They yoke them to another animal who's stronger so the smaller one doesn't have to carry all the weight. So now he can actually learn to do the work, strengthen himself, and discover how to do it. It's okay to call yourself weak. It's okay for you to say, I can't do this. It's okay for you to say, God, I don't know how to walk in that, because he's going to say, yoke up, baby, let's go. You don't have to carry it all. Just follow me. Just walk with me. And he takes us. And we do the work he's called us to do with him. Full of rest in him. So here's the deal. Rest comes when we are surrendered to Christ's rule and reign in our lives. I'm going to ask the band to come up. Rest happens when we submit to God. When we are yoked to his kingdom, his rule, his reign in our lives. There's actually peace in that. And we just thought if we could just get away from God and away from these things that we could find rest. He says that's actually where you find exhaustion. Your marriage, it's not about you saving your marriage. It's about submitting to him and letting him work your marriage. It's not about you trying to figure out how to fix your kid. It's about you surrendering to him as the perfect father who knows your kid way better than you and will lead you to the place you're supposed to go. You don't have to figure it out. He's got it. What do you find that is weighting you down, that you are all claws in? I got this. I got it. For some of you, it's your salvation. I'm just going to go there. For some of you, you're trying to figure out how to save yourself. And you've been doing it since you were a kid because that's what you've been taught. Listen, unfortunately, I grew up in a church. And my church was way more about all the rules that I had to figure out and follow that I just looked at and said, I can't do that. So I had to work really hard to try to figure out how to do it. And I could never rest in God's grace. I couldn't rest in that. Because then I felt like I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't doing it well enough because I have to do it. You, listen, please listen. For those of you who lay in bed at night going, I'm scared to close my eyes because I'm afraid that I may not wake up and I'm not sure what's going to happen to me. There is somebody here who struggles with that. You don't have to have that fear. when you rest in his grace, because it's sufficient. So the best thing you could do would be to put down your plow, put down your shovel, put down your pickaxe, and just surrender to him and let him work in you. You want to experience life to the full? Then acknowledge that maybe what you've lived up to this point in time is you trying to figure it out and you're ready to surrender it to Jesus. And I know some of you, because you're older, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, and you're thinking, man, if people find out that I wasn't a Christian coming in and I've been telling everybody I'm a Christian, and like, what are they going to think about me now? Who cares? If it means you spend an eternity with him, who cares? Surrender to him and let go of the exhaustion of you trying to figure it out and let him work. Put your marriage down. Quit trying to figure it out. Let him speak to it. When was the last time you asked, God, my marriage sucks. God, I need you to fix it. I don't know what to do. That's a great prayer, by the way. He doesn't even care if you use the S word. You tired? You exhausted? Let him do it. Let him have you. Let him have you. Because he is way better than anything that you're thinking that you need right now that is excluding him. He's good. Let's pray.